Do you ever have those TV series that just sit at the back of your mind like a half-remembered dream? You're never quite sure if you actually watch them, or if your brain stitched together fragments from late-night channel hopping, VHS box art, or the muffled glow of a television left on after bedtime. Shows that feel too strange, too specific, or too quietly thoughtful to have lodged properly when you were young. You remember vibes rather than plots, faces without names, concepts without context. Sometimes it's because you caught a single episode at the wrong age, when you didn't yet have the life experience to understand what it was really doing. Sometimes it's because the show didn't shout at you. It didn't rely on explosions, cliffhangers, or merchandising hooks. It just existed, patient, restrained, confident that if you were paying attention, it had something to say. And if you weren't, well, it wasn't going to beg. A lot of 80s and early 90s television fell into that category for me. Not because it was bad, but because it wasn't on my radar yet. I was too busy, too young, or simply not tuned to the frequency it was broadcasting on. And every now and then, years later, one of those shows resurfaces, and you're left wondering why it took you so long to properly see it. Welcome to the Snake Pit, where we're full of bile and venom. I'm your host, Snake Damon, and today we're digging up one of those half-forgotten gems that turns out to be smarter, braver, and more relevant than most of what passes for prestige television today, Alien Nation. So, Alien Nation is set in a near-future version of the United States, but honestly, its inciting incident is pure science fiction mythology. Back in 1990, a flying saucer crashes out in the Mojave Desert, carrying the Tenctonese, an alien race trying to escape from this brutal overseer class that kept them enslaved. Now, these Tenctonese, they're humanoid, but, not quite human. They're stronger, they're smarter, genetically engineered to be adaptable, resilient, and, obedient. Basically, a slave race built to survive just about anything, now dumped, pretty much unceremoniously, right into American society. They end up being called Newcomers. What Alien Nation does right away, and honestly, way more intelligently than most genre TV, is refuse to make the aliens the problem. No, the problem is us. The newcomers are integrated into society as immigrants, and the series doesn't waste any time digging into what that actually means. Suspicion, fear, token acceptance, open hostility, slurs, segregation that's, disguised as concern. The show totally gets that science fiction is at its best, not when it invents new monsters, but when it holds up a mirror to the old ones. The storylines are often structured as morality plays, but they're not preachy, they're observational. Racism, bigotry, cultural anxiety, and fear of the other are explored through the lens of the Tenctonese, who function as a stand-in for racial minorities, immigrants, and, importantly for the time, sexual minorities as well. The show frequently inverts expectations to make its point land harder. One of the most infamous examples is George Francisco's pregnancy. In Tenctonese biology, the male carries the fetus for part of gestation. The episode doesn't treat this as a gimmick. It uses it to flip gender assumptions on their head. Dialogue like, if you females had to feel the pain we males feel during pregnancy, there wouldn't be any babies isn't played for cheap laughs. It's a pointed bit of social commentary disguised as cultural world-building. Alien Nation constantly asks a deceptively simple question. What does it actually mean to be human? And once you start looking, the rituals, customs, prejudices, and contradictions of humanity start to look pretty bizarre when seen from the outside. The aliens aren't strange because they're different. They're strange because they expose how arbitrary our own norms really are. Like a lot of shows from the late 80s and early 90s, Alien Nation wears the structure of a buddy cop drama. That was the Trojan horse. But underneath that familiar framework is, honestly, one of the most thoughtful science fiction series of its era. Created by Kenneth Johnson, who'd already proven his credentials with The Incredible Hulk and V, the show knows exactly how to smuggle big ideas into mainstream television without losing its audience. At the center of it all is Detective Matthew Sikes, played superbly by Gary Graham. He's a human cop still carrying the trauma of losing his previous partner, killed by a newcomer during a robbery. That history matters. It informs his anger, his suspicion, and his resistance. His new partner, Detective George Francisco, played brilliantly by Eric Pierpoint, is a newcomer, navigating both the police force and a society that hasn't decided whether it wants him there. Their dynamic works because it isn't idealized. They clash, they misunderstand each other, they say the wrong thing, but they also learn, slowly, earnestly, believably. The supporting cast fleshes out this world rather than padding it. Kathy Frankel, Sikes' newcomer neighbor and eventual romantic interest, adds intimacy to the broader social tensions. Captain Brian Grazer, Detective Dobbs, and even Albert Einstein, the newcomer janitor, each contribute to making the precinct feel like a living ecosystem rather than, just a set. George Francisco's family gives the show emotional grounding. Susan, Buck, and Emily aren't just extensions of George's storyline, they're reflections of generational tension, resentment, hope, and adaptation. Buck's anger toward humans feels earned. Emily's optimism feels fragile. Nothing is neat. Nothing is easy. Yes, Fox cancelled Alien Nation far too early, and yes, they partially redeemed themselves with 5 TV movies. But even so, it's hard not to see what was lost. This was a show that was still growing, still deepening, still becoming more confident in what it had to say. Technically, sure, it shows its age. The budget is modest, most of it is shot on sound stages. The makeup is clearly makeup. The effects are practical, sometimes clunky, undeniably of their time. But here's the thing, I like that. Real stunts, real explosions, real actors under real prosthetics. It feels tangible in a way modern green screen excess rarely does. And none of that matters compared to the writing. This show doesn't rely on a single breakout performance. No one actor is carrying it on sheer charisma. The strength is in the scripts, the structure, the ideas. Alien Nation is astonishingly well written, and that's why it holds up. It made sense in the late 80s. It made sense 20 years ago. And disturbingly, it might make more sense now than it ever did before. Here's the thing that's impossible to ignore watching Alien Nation today. If this show were made now, it would be branded woke within 5 minutes of its trailer dropping. Social media would melt down. Think pieces would be written before the first episode even aired. Comment sections would fill with the usual buzzwords, agenda, propaganda, forced diversity, preachy nonsense. And yet Alien Nation did all of this decades ago, long before the term woke became a cudgel, a brand, or a marketing strategy. That's the difference. This show wasn't designed to signal virtue. It wasn't built to lecture the audience, scold them, or instruct them on the correct way to think. It didn't flatten characters into mouthpieces or reduce conflict to a binary of saints and villains. Instead, it treated social tension as something messy, uncomfortable, and deeply human. Prejudice exists in Alien Nation, and not just among cartoonishly evil antagonists. It exists in ordinary people, in institutions, in protagonists. Matthew Sikes isn't introduced as an enlightened hero. He's angry, resentful, and damaged. His arc isn't about being told he's wrong. It's about slowly realizing it himself through experience, consequence, and contradiction. That's something modern, woke media fundamentally struggles with. Today's versions of these themes tend to arrive pre-sanitized and pre-approved. Characters start morally correct and remain so. Opposition isn't explored, it's dismissed. Disagreement isn't interrogated, it's punished. And because of that, the audience doesn't learn anything. They're just expected to nod along or shut up. Alien Nation doesn't do that. It allows its metaphors to breathe. It lets uncomfortable ideas sit without rushing to reassure the viewer. It shows cultural clashes without immediately resolving them. Sometimes there isn't a neat answer by the end of the episode, just damage control, compromise, or uneasy coexistence. That's why, instead of feeling like propaganda, the show now feels like a warning. It's a snapshot of what happens when societies try, and often fail, to integrate radically different cultures without honesty, patience, or humility. It shows how good intentions can curdle into resentment, how fear hardens into language, how words like slag and turd don't start as violence, but end there. What modern media often gets wrong is assuming that representation alone equals progress. Alien Nation understood something more uncomfortable. Progress requires friction. It requires characters to be wrong, to say the wrong thing, to act selfishly, to grow slowly, or not at all. If this show were made today, it wouldn't be allowed to do that. It would be smoother, louder, more confident in its own righteousness, and paradoxically, far less honest. Which is why Alien Nation, despite being packed with themes modern audiences would instantly label woke, doesn't feel like it belongs to that category at all. It feels like a document from a time when writers trusted viewers to think, and when social commentary wasn't a branding exercise, but a risk. The show builds patiently. The first couple of episodes are fine, but unremarkable. Stick with it. The characters grow, the relationships deepen, the themes sharpen. By the time you reach the latter half of the series, you realize you're watching something genuinely rare, a show that trusts its audience to think. And yes, actual character development, not performative growth, not reset button storytelling, real progression. People change, opinions evolve, resentments soften, or sometimes they harden. Which brings us to the uncomfortable truth. Alien Nation is more relevant now than it has any right to be. Immigration anxiety, cultural fragmentation, fear masquerading as tradition, dehumanizing language, that whole us versus them rhetoric. The show doesn't scream about these things, it illustrates them, calmly, clearly, relentlessly. Maybe that's why it finally clicked for me now. Maybe I needed the distance, the context, the exhaustion with modern television's tendency to lecture instead of explore. Alien Nation doesn't tell you what to think. It shows you what happens when people refuse to understand each other and when they try. This is easily one of the best science fiction TV shows of its era, and it still earns a place in my top 20 of all time. If you love sci-fi, this is essential viewing. And even if you don't, especially if you don't, this series will surprise you. Give it time, let it grow on you. It rewards patience in a way very few shows do anymore. Thanks for dropping by the Snake Pit. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell, like the video, and leave your opinions in the comments, where, naturally, I won't read them. Until next time, stay venomous.